We now know the look of Chelsea's Club World Cup squad heading to the US. Chelsea literally just announcing it. I've been waiting for it all day. We obviously last night heard from Matt Law that Georgia Petrovic, among others, would not be included in this squad, which of course brings up another separate conversation, but I felt it right to react and kind of break down this squad because there are some interesting names and I think excitement in terms of how some of these players could be constructed. Some of the concerns over maybe some lighter areas of the current squad that could have been aided by at least one signing or more in recent times. So we're going to go through all of that. Please like, subscribe if you want to follow my content, follow what Chelsea are doing in the Club World Cup, hit that like button, subscribe. Also, you can listen to the show on your favourite podcast provider, Apple, Spotify, etc. as well, because we will be covering in depth whatever goes on from a Chelsea perspective during the Club World Cup in the United States. So, I feel like, big obviously is regarding the goalkeepers. That was kind of the big thing that Matt Law spoke about. So, no Georgia Petrovic. Instead, the goalkeepers being taken are Robert Sanchez, Philip Jorgensen, Mike Penders, and Gabs Slonina. That is, I think Slonina's inclusion is the biggest shock of them all, given this is a guy that was bought so long ago and was kind of the 2022-2023 Mike Penders. He was the guy that I think the club maybe hoped would be where Mike Penders is now. Like, Penders is, I think, the biggest inclusion here because he's the big unknown. There is so much hype around him, not only from people who've watched him on loan, but also what he could become. And it's whether he is going to gain any football in the upcoming weeks under Enzo Maresca, given that Sanchez was the first choice, given that Philip Jorgensen finished the season in Wroclaw. So I think that will be a big conversation point. And whether Mike Penders will remain at Chelsea or he'll be sent out on loan once again. Because, of course, the Mike Maignan saga that might not entirely be done when as well you add in what might be happening with Petrovic potentially being sold or loaned for the season, opens up the door for a new goalkeeper. So that in itself, whether Penders is just there to kind of experience stuff with Chelsea and he's actually not going to be used as a first choice player, which I think is probably more likely because I suspect Sanchez and Jorgensen, most likely Robert Sanchez, will be Chelsea's first choice. Defenders, we've got Cucurella, Tosin, Badiashile, Colwell, Mamadou Sarr, this is a new signing included, Trevor Chalobah, Reece James, Malo Gusto, and Samino, another new signing that we haven't seen any of in a Chelsea shirt so far, and Josh Achimpong. I'm really happy that Josh Achimpong is included, as well Trev Chalobah. I had slight fears that with the Petrovic news, is Trev going to be thrown back into the bomb squad? Not the case. I think the big thing here is Mamadou Sarr. Obviously, how is he going to look in the current Chelsea setup? He's, returning from Strasbourg, or at least we bought him from Strasbourg, which kind of is technically like being on loan at the moment because it is a satellite club for Chelsea. So Sarr, will he become I think with Sarr, my hope is he can effectively take the place of a Disasi or Badiashile. What I mean by that is be a good rotational centre-back option, but have a higher ceiling than Badiashile or Disasi have. What I mean by that is they're not just there and you kind of want to replace them. He can actually progress and upgrade himself into a first teamer. Because obviously there's no West Fofana here. That's not a big shock unless you haven't been keeping up to date with the news. And I can have some sympathy because so much Chelsea news comes out. But we already knew that West Fofana was not going to be going to America because of his injury status, because he wants to have more rehab time ahead of the new season. That's understandable. But what this does do is obviously give an opportunity and opens a door potentially for a Mamadou Sarr to establish himself, who also does have a squad number as well as a number of players as well. Will Reece James play more so as a right back? How much football will Anselmino get at all? I'm not entirely sure. Josh Achimpong, will he find himself being developed into more of a first team player? I think that's his big mission heading into next season, is whether he can become more than just a fringe kind of young player, because with no Conference League football, that's going to be the challenge for the fringe players and young players in this group to try and establish themselves and to try and gain that first team football. But pretty happy with those options, and whether Chelsea will establish a more dominant centre-back partnership throughout the course of this tournament, obviously. In midfield, we've got Enzo Fernandez, and then we've got two new names. Darius Hugo, obviously the new signing. He's been given Joao Felix's number 14. Andrey Santos. Andrey Santos, I think, is the star name of this tournament for Chelsea. I think he is the one that gains the most interest and intrigue from everyone. I don't even think Delap kind of usurps Santos here. Santos has been the name that so many people, either from a South American, Brazilian perspective, shout out to Jessica Frotto. I know we posted the clip with my Joe Tweeds convo where we spoke about Santos. I am so excited to see what Andrey Santos is going to look like in Chelsea's midfield. How is he utilised? How can he upgrade the team? How can he benefit the team from a physical, athletic, but also, of course, an attacking point of view? Because we know from a creative and goal-scoring point of view, he was such an integral player for Liam Rossigna at Strasbourg. And hopefully this will be the start of his breakthrough season at Stamford Bridge. Asugo is another one that's interesting because it gives more midfield depth. I think that's the excitement for me, because we were crying out for substantial and decent midfield depth for the majority of last season. And I think what Asugo does is hopefully gives the license for Maresca to rest Moises Caicedo. I think that's the one top of the list. We love Caicedo. He's been player of the year. But what I really don't want to see is Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo playing every single game here. I want to give them some rest, and I hope that Asugo, Santos, Romeo Lavia being in the squad, Dewsbury Hall is also in the squad here, they will take up minutes as well. But I think for Asugo, for Santos, I think there's excitement, obviously, to see how they will look as young midfielders. But I think Santos, maybe give the video a like if you're excited for Santos, and let me know down in the comments below who you're most excited for. But I think Santos is top of the list. We then move on to the wingers, and this is kind of the big concern, I think, for most people that's being flagged. In terms of natural wide players, and I think that is relevant within the system that Enzo Maresca has used so far as Chelsea head coach. He likes natural wingers, and when he puts players in those wide positions, they are touchline hugging wingers. They are natural wingers. They are not players who are kind of deemed inside forwards, kind of inside number 10s. We'll see how Chelsea's recruitment goes for the rest of the summer. Obviously, they were pushing hard for Jamie Gittins from Borussia Dortmund, who will also be at this tournament. And even if Chelsea sign Gittins in 6 or 7 days' time, he can't be used in this tournament. But I think that's a big thing, because obviously we've only got Pedro Neto, Noni Madueke, and Tyreek George. Positive for Tyreek George, I think the lack of natural wingers in this squad, because there is now a boost in kind of natural centre forwards in this squad, means that I think Tyreek George will be given, hopefully, substantial minutes here, which is great, because and again, a bit like Josh Achimpong, like to see him go to that next step and develop himself, because it's kind of hard to know where we sit right now, how Chelsea's winger kind of department is going to look like, with Jadon Sancho back to Man United, Mykhailo Mudryk obviously nowhere to be seen, Joao Felix, who maybe could have played in this role, not being taken, Raheem Sterling also has no future at Chelsea, and maybe missing someone out there. But you have 3 players there. I suspect that Neto and Noni are the first choice, but obviously there's going to need to be rotation, and also maybe whether some other players will be utilised in that role. Because then we get to the forwards. Obviously, Liam Delap, Chelsea's new number 9. No under 21s for him. I think Delap will take a lot of minutes. I'd like to see Delap start a lot of games because I think you need to start to build that chemistry, especially with his central midfield, with his wide players, make him feel like a Chelsea player, get him some goals, particularly in the group stage, build that confidence heading into the pre-season and the new season, and also to give a bit of rest to Nicholas Jackson, who's obviously taken a lot of football. But, it does give a new look to Chelsea's attack. The bizarre thing is, so you've got Delap, Jackson, Guiu, and I'm going to name Cole Palmer in the forwards because kind of hard, right? Palmer can play a number 10. He could maybe play out wide. He could maybe make up for that shortfall in the wide department. That may be used in this tournament by Enzo Maresca. Or he could be used as a false 9. I don't think he will be because we've got more forwards, natural forwards. You've even got Mark Guiu heading out to the tournament. And this is the wild one. Christopher Nkunku is going out to the US. I ponder if by the time this tournament is over, Nkunku is still a Chelsea player. I wouldn't entirely be surprised if he doesn't last a full tournament as a Chelsea player. That doesn't mean he's going to move to somewhere else and play against Chelsea in this tournament, because obviously, as we know, I think even being named in a squad means you can't play for someone else in the tournament. It's bizarre because Nkunku clearly doesn't have a Chelsea future. Maybe I'm wildly wrong, And we are about to see a massive 180 in the trajectory of Christopher Nkunku. But I think most people are a little bit stunned that Nkunku's there, but not Georgia Petrovic, for instance. Like in terms of like their momentum at Chelsea and what they could be doing over the course of pre-season. So that is the squad. That is the breakdown of the squad. I'm interested to hear what you have to say as ever. We're going to do a separate show. I'm going to release a separate show tomorrow where we're going to talk about Petrovic and we're going to talk about a lot of the frustration that's been had already and whether it's unfair, whether it's hyperbolic, and kind of having a breakdown of what's gone on so far in the transfer window and where we sit. Because, you know, once we get into games, we'll be talking about the games. And I also want to hear from you as well what you make of the Club World Cup. I'm not really sure how to feel about it. You know, we're coming off the back of a really intense season that ended in a great way. And there's still a bit of me that wants to kind of just reflect on that and kind of just enjoy Roclaw, you know, enjoy how it ended positively and kind of sit in that moment. That was our last moment watching Chelsea play football. And you kind of have this weird tournament that's clearly internally being taken very seriously. That's why you have to take some of the exclusions from the squad seriously if you personally are not taking the competition itself seriously. Because if players are not being taken to this tournament, I think from an internal point of view, it's kind of being signalled they're not a part of plans, at least at the current point. So I think you have to have that distinction, even if you don't really care what happens to this tournament. The club have made it pretty clear this is a serious tournament. There is obviously hypocrisy in terms of some of the selections because they're arguing it's a continuation of the 24-25 campaign. But then if we look through the entirety of the squad, you've got Penders, Selena, Sarr, Asugo, Santos, Delap. Obviously, we're not a part of our squad last season, so there is that as well. But are you excited for the tournament? You know, I'll sit here right now and I'll probably talk about this in my preview next week. I'm not going to judge Maresca and his players overly harshly if Chelsea don't go far in this tournament. I've just got to be honest, because the nature of football now and the kind of farcical nature of some of the things that have gone on around this tournament where certain teams are being included clearly for branding purposes, for Infantino, you know, running onto a stream recently and talking about even getting Ronaldo in this tournament. It's a branding exercise, which is kind of how most football is. But, you know, it doesn't really, you know, come into my mind as seriously in kind of how I'm going to weight things in terms of the Premier League, the Champions League, even the FA Cup. You know, it doesn't come to the same level. If Chelsea go all the way and win it, amazing, right? And it'd be great to really capitalise on positive momentum. And I'm sure once we get into the flow of things and seeing football, we will obviously want Chelsea to win. But I just, personally for me, I'm not going to, you know, I think it'd be very weird for me to sit in a couple of weeks and sit here and go, if Chelsea have been knocked out, say, in the first knockout round, because I think they will get through the group stage. But if we get knocked out by PSG, who are the current Champions League holders, are we really going to sit here and you know, have a meltdown about it? I mean, some people probably will, but I'm just going to tell you from an early point here, I'm not. That doesn't mean I won't be happy if Chelsea win it, but I just kind of think it's a very weird and unique format we've never had for this tournament before. And I also just fear about player fatigue and the impact it's going to have in the long term, because these players get no rest at all. And that's kind of my fear and kind of why I want Maresca, if we can, to use this as a bit of a pre-season to kind of rotate, to look at some new faces and to see how they do and try and experiment a bit. I wouldn't blame Maresca for using it as kind of his first part of pre-season because it's such a unique moment. So those are my thoughts. That is the squad. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about more Chelsea news and some of the other stuff that's been going on that I know a lot of people want to speak about. But that is it for today's show. Please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Please do interact in the comments below. I want to hear your thoughts on the squad, the Club World Cup, all that good stuff. And I'll see you again very soon. All the best.